Beneath the crystalline spires of Zephyria Prime, where twin suns cast rainbow shadows through hexagonal corridors of living metal, failure echoes differently than on Earth. The Imperial Academy of Sciences hummed with the collective intelligence of 1,000 alien species, its very walls constructed from materials that responded to thought itself, glowing brighter when breakthrough discoveries occurred, and dimming when minds struggled with impossible concepts. Yet, in the mathematics wing, where holographic equations danced like celestial ballet in the recycled air, two small figures sat trembling before their academic executioners. Princess Lyra and Princess Nova, daughters of the mighty Zephyrian Queen, stared at their test results with tears that sparkled like liquid starlight, each drop containing the chemical signature of their species' unique emotional response to shame. Their pointed ears drooped with the weight of failure, while classmates whispered cruel words in 17 different languages, their comments translated in real time by neural implants that ensured no insult went ununderstood. They had failed again, their scores so low they seemed to mock the very concept of royal intelligence. In the shadows of that gleaming hall, pushing a hover mop through puddles of luminescent cleaning fluid that changed color based on the ambient stress levels of nearby students, a weathered human janitor named Marcus Chen paused. His calloused hands gripped the handle tighter as he watched the royal twins crumble under the weight of cosmic expectations, their young shoulders bearing burdens that would crush most adults. What happened next would not only save two young hearts from breaking, it would redefine what it means to teach across the stars, challenge the very foundations of galactic academic hierarchy, and prove that sometimes the most profound wisdom comes from the most unexpected teachers. Before we start, subscribe now so you don't miss more incredible stories like this one. Oh, and before we dive in, tell us in the comments, where are you watching this video from? We love hearing from you and always read every message. The Imperial Academy stretched across floating platforms above Zephyria Prime's capital, its bioluminescent walls pulsing with pure knowledge like the heartbeat of the universe itself. The morning air tasted of ozone and ambition, crackling with the energy of a dozen different atmospheric processes working to accommodate species from across the known universe. Crystalline walkways hummed beneath the footsteps of students whose very presence defied the laws of physics, beings who breathed methane, others who existed partially in parallel dimensions, and some whose thoughts moved faster than light itself. Here, the galaxy's most brilliant young minds gathered to learn mathematics that could bend space-time, chemistry that could birth new stars, and physics that danced on the edge of impossibility. In the mathematics wing, Professor Vextar, a tall crystalline being whose translucent body refracted light into geometric patterns, distributed test results to his mixed species class. Once again, we see the natural order of intellectual hierarchy, said Professor Vextar, his crystalline fingers clicking against the hovering datapad like ice breaking in a winter storm. The Andromedan students have achieved perfection, as expected. Their genetic predisposition toward mathematical excellence continues to prove the superiority of their neural architecture. The classroom fell silent as he paused before two small desks in the back corner, where Princess Lyra and Princess Nova sat with their violet heads bowed. Their royal robes, woven from clouds harvested from their home planet's upper atmosphere, seemed to dim in the harsh light of academic failure. The twins had inherited their mother's elegant bone structure and luminous eyes, but none of her legendary intellectual prowess. And our royal students, continued Vextar, his tone dripping with disdain that cut through the room's recycled air, have once again proven that bloodline does not equate to brilliance. Perhaps the royal genome has become diluted over the generations. Snickers erupted from the front rows where the Andromedan students sat, their silver skin shimmering with superiority. Lyra's hands trembled as she received her test pad, the holographic display showing a bright red 14% that seemed to burn in the air. Nova's results were even worse, a devastating 9%. "Perhaps, Your Highnesses," said Professor Vextar with mock reverence, "you should consider pursuing more suitable subjects. Art, perhaps, or music." The twins' pointed ears drooped lower as cruel laughter filled the chamber. In the corridor outside, Marcus Chen pushed his hover mop past the classroom door. At 43, the former engineer had learned to make himself invisible in these halls of academic privilege. Marcus had arrived on Zephyria Prime 2 years ago on a refugee transport, one of the few humans granted asylum after the economic collapse of Earth's outer colonies. His engineering credentials meant nothing here. Alien technology operated on principles his human education never covered, built on mathematical foundations that seemed to mock everything he thought he understood about the universe. The only work available was custodial, a job that came with a small apartment in the academy's service sector and enough credits to keep his 8-year-old son Tommy fed and in school. Every night, Marcus returned to their modest quarters with aching hands and a heavy heart, helping Tommy with homework that pushed the boundaries of his own understanding. The boy was brilliant, perhaps too brilliant for his own good in this place, and Marcus lived in constant fear that his son would face the same academic cruelty he witnessed daily in these halls. Tommy attended the academy's lower school on a charity scholarship, one of only 3 human children in a student body of thousands. Through the transparent aluminum door, he could see the 2 Zephyrian princesses hunched over their desks, their body language speaking of shame that transcended species barriers. Something in their posture reminded him of his son Tommy during those first difficult months when other children had mocked his human heritage. "Tomorrow," announced Professor Vextar, "we begin trans-dimensional calculus. I trust our royal students will find some way to participate." The class erupted in fresh laughter, but Marcus noticed the twin princesses weren't just failing, they were giving up. Their spark was being systematically crushed under the weight of public humiliation. But while the hall laughed, the outsider's eyes shimmered faintly, as if holding a truth older than the stars. The next morning brought news that rippled through the academy like gravitational waves. The Galactic Mathematics Olympiad, held every 5 years, would take place in 3 months. Teams from each major civilization would compete in mathematical challenges that historically determined trade routes, territorial boundaries, and technological sharing agreements. Dean Zixthon, a massive Garaxian whose rock-like exterior bore ancient scars, stood at the quantum podium where his words would be translated into 400 languages. "This year's Olympiad will test our finest minds against challenges that would make previous generations tremble," rumbled the dean, his voice creating harmonic resonances in the hall's crystal columns that seemed to vibrate with ancient power. "The winning team will bring honor to their institution and species and will help determine the mathematical standards that guide galactic civilization for the next generation." Professor Vextar stepped forward, his crystalline body refracting light into prismatic patterns that danced across the assembled crowd. "The Andromedan students will represent our academy naturally. Their mathematical superiority makes them our obvious choice. Zephyro Sandara and Nyx have already solved theoretical problems that most graduate students couldn't attempt." From the royal section, Queen Calistara watched with the composed expression that had made her legendary in diplomatic circles. Her daughters sat beside her, their violet skin pale with anxiety as they sensed what was coming. The Queen's own mathematical brilliance had once revolutionized interstellar trade negotiations, but that legacy seemed to have skipped a generation. "However," continued Vextar with cruel edge, "tradition demands we also field a team of developing minds, students who might benefit from competing against superior intellects." The hall fell silent as implications became clear. Marcus, mopping the upper galleries, felt his stomach tighten. "I nominate our royal students," declared Vextar, pointing directly at Lyra and Nova, along with any other charitable cases. Perhaps the exercise will teach them humility. Gasps echoed through the hall. The idea of the failing princesses representing the academy wasn't just absurd, it was cruel public theater. The twins sat frozen, cycling through emotions too complex for their years. Finally, Lyra stood on trembling legs. We accept," she whispered. As the assembly dispersed, Marcus made a decision that surprised even himself. Moving through the crowd with practiced invisibility, he approached the royal section. "Your Majesty," said Marcus, his voice steady despite the audacity. "I'm Marcus Chen, custodial staff. I'd like to help your daughters prepare for the competition." The twins looked up with pure shock. Around them, conversation died. "You're human," said Nova, not cruelly but with innocent confusion. "And you're princesses who deserve better than what this place has given you," replied Marcus simply. No one believed he would even try. But the silence that followed spread across the chamber like a storm. That evening, an unlikely meeting took place in an unused mathematics classroom. Marcus had prepared the space, clearing away advanced holographic equipment and replacing it with simple writing surfaces. Princess Lyra and Nova entered hesitantly, followed by Queen Celestara with 2 royal guards. "You don't have to do this," said Queen Celestara to Marcus, her voice carrying the weight of diplomatic experience and a mother's protective instinct. "My daughter's academic struggles are not your responsibility. I know what it means for a human to offer help in these circumstances. The political implications alone." Marcus finished arranging chairs around a circular table, an intentionally non-hierarchical setup he'd learned from his teaching days back on Earth's colonies, when he'd briefly considered education before engineering called to him. "With respect, Your Majesty, struggling with math isn't about the math. It's about believing you can't do it. And in a place like this, where different means inferior, that belief becomes a prison." The twins exchanged glances, their violet eyes reflecting a mixture of skepticism and desperate hope. At 12 and 11 respectively, they had endured 3 years of academic humiliation that had convinced them mathematics was simply beyond their capabilities. They had internalized the daily mockery until it became truth. "But we're stupid," said Lyra quietly. "Everyone says so." "Everyone's wrong," replied Marcus, pulling out his battered datapad. "When you look at Professor Vextar's equations, what do you see? Numbers floating in the air that don't make sense." Nova shrugged. "Exactly. That's the first problem." Marcus displayed a simple graph. "Math isn't about floating numbers or crystalline professors showing off. It's about patterns, and your species sees patterns differently than Andromedans do." For the next hour, Marcus worked with the twins to reimagine their failed homework through the lens of their species' natural mathematical intuition. Instead of forcing them to think like Andromedans, he encouraged them to trust their instincts about energy flows and pattern recognition. Slowly, something shifted. The twins started asking questions instead of accepting defeat. They began seeing connections between equations and natural phenomena their species understood intuitively. This actually makes sense," whispered Nova, staring at a quantum mechanics problem. "It always made sense," said Marcus gently. "You just needed to approach it in a way that honored how your minds work." Queen Celestara moved closer, her royal composure cracking as she watched her daughters engage with mathematics for the first time in years. "Stop calling yourselves stupid," Marcus told the twins as they prepared to leave. "Intelligence isn't about fitting into someone else's definition of smart. It's about understanding your own unique way of seeing the universe. And just when everyone thought they would break, something was revealed that no one expected." 3 weeks into their study sessions, Professor Vextar called on Princess Nova to solve a complex integral. an equation he'd specifically chosen for its difficulty. "Princess Nova," he said condescendingly, "perhaps you'd like to demonstrate the progress your human tutor has achieved." The classroom fell silent as the holographic equation materialized, a swirling mass of variables that seemed to dance with malicious complexity. But instead of defeat, Nova approached the display with curiosity. "This is a wave equation describing quantum probability distributions," said Nova, her voice gaining strength. "Most students would use linear integration, but that's not how energy actually moves." She began manipulating the holographic equation not through standard operations, but by treating it as three-dimensional energy flow. She traced natural curves that her species' evolved instincts could perceive. "Energy doesn't move in straight lines," she continued confidently. "It follows the path of least resistance while maintaining conservation principles." The equation simplified until an elegant solution emerged, not only correct, but demonstrating insights that graduate students would struggle to achieve. The classroom was dead silent. Professor Vextar stared at the solution, his crystalline form refracting light in agitated patterns. That is correct," he admitted grudgingly, "though highly unconventional." "Unconventional doesn't mean wrong," said Nova quietly. Within days, other students began approaching the twins for help. The Rigelian pupils found that Zephyrian flow-based mathematics complemented their spatial reasoning. Even Andromedan students quietly asked questions about these alternative approaches. Marcus watched these developments during his cleaning rounds, recognizing that his role was changing. He wasn't just teaching the twins to pass tests, he was helping them discover mathematical insights that could revolutionize galactic understanding. Dean Zixton called Marcus to his office, the Garaxian's massive form casting shadows across walls lined with academic achievements. "Janitor Chen," rumbled the Dean, "you've been conducting unauthorized educational activities." "I've been helping 2 students understand mathematics in a way that works with their natural abilities," replied Marcus carefully. "Do you know why the Galactic Mathematics Olympiad exists?" The Dean moved to his window. "Mathematical superiority has determined galactic hierarchy for millennia. The species that wins sets standards for technology, trade, and territorial expansion." Marcus began understanding the larger implications. By helping the Zephyrian princesses discover their mathematical strengths, he was potentially disrupting established galactic power structures. "The Andromedans have won the last 8 competitions," continued Dean Zixton. "But now 2 young Zephyrians are solving problems in ways our most advanced professors can barely follow. It wasn't just knowledge, it was legacy." And suddenly, silence fell across the room. The Galactic Mathematics Olympiad arrived with ceremony befitting an event that would reshape interstellar politics. Harmony Point Station swelled with delegates, media representatives, and students from across the known galaxy. The competition's main arena was a sphere of transparent aluminum suspended in zero gravity. Team Andromedan entered to thunderous applause, their silver skin gleaming with practiced confidence. Their species' 800-year winning streak had made them celebrities. The Zephyrian team, Lyra, Nova, and volunteer student Kai, entered to polite but skeptical applause. Betting pools gave them odds of several thousand to 1. Marcus sat in formal clothes Queen Celestara had insisted upon, watching as his students prepared for the most important academic challenge in galactic history. When Lyra's turn came, her problem, describing dark matter and quantum field interactions, materialized in standard Andromedan notation. For a moment she stood still, old fears threatening to resurface. Then she began to move. Instead of traditional algebraic steps, Lyra approached the equation as if reading atmospheric patterns. Her hands traced flowing curves, transforming rigid mathematical structure into something that breathed with natural energy. Her solution emerged as a dynamic system, showing how dark matter and quantum fields continuously influenced each other across cosmic time. It was not just correct, it was elegant in a way that made traditional approaches seem clumsy. The arena was completely silent. Then a Centaurian physicist began applauding, followed by others who recognized the profound implications. This wasn't just a different way of solving problems, it was a different way of understanding reality. Nova's performance built upon her sister's foundation, solving galactic matter transmission probabilities by treating the galaxy as a vast, fluid system. Her solution was so elegant that quantum computers needed minutes to verify its accuracy. By the third round, other teams had stopped working to watch the Zephyrian approaches. The mathematical insights emerging were opening entirely new fields of theoretical possibility. When final scores were announced, the Zephyrian team had not only won, they had achieved scores exceeding theoretical maximums under traditional systems. During the closing ceremony, Queen Celestara took the stage as head of state, making a civilization-changing announcement. For 8 centuries, the galaxy has operated under the assumption that mathematical truth belongs to a single tradition. Today, my daughters have proven that the universe is far more mathematically diverse than we dared imagine. Effective immediately, Zephyria Prime will offer full scholarships to students from any species who wish to study what we're calling fluid mathematics. Approaches that honor the natural mathematical intuitions evolution has given each of our peoples. The implications rippled through the arena like shockwaves. If mathematical truth was truly diverse, then technological and political hierarchies built on singular tradition would have to be reconsidered. But the final blow came not from words. It came from a name the galaxy had long forgotten. As victory celebrations continued, Marcus prepared to slip away, his part seemingly complete. But Queen Celestara appeared beside him. "Marcus Chen," she said with weighted voice, "we need to talk." She led him to a quiet observation deck overlooking Harmony Point's central core, where they sat beneath a tree whose leaves changed color with distant pulsars' rhythm. "When you first offered to help my daughters, I had you investigated," the Queen said without preamble. "What I discovered was interesting." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. "I'm just a janitor, Your Majesty. Former engineer, but those credentials don't mean much here." Marcus Chen, age 43, born on Kepler Station. Educated at Colonial Engineering Institute, specialized in theoretical multidimensional mathematics, worked 15 years developing deep space navigation systems. She studied his face. But that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is what you did during the Vegan crisis 12 years ago. Marcus went very still. The Vegan crisis was classified, a near disaster that almost collapsed 3-star systems when experimental wormhole technology destabilized local space-time. "I was just part of the engineering team," he said quietly. "You were the engineering team," corrected Queen Celestara. "When automated systems failed and 17 billion lives hung in the balance, you personally calculated wormhole stabilization corrections. In your head, in 47 minutes, using mathematical approaches our best physicists still don't understand. The official reports buried your contributions under collaborative solutions," she continued. "But Admiral Korath told me you saved those systems using mathematics no one else could follow, let alone replicate." Marcus stared at the artificial aurora above them. "A lot of good people died. If I'd been faster, better at explaining what I was seeing. You saved 17 billion lives," Queen Celestara said firmly, then disappeared from galactic records. "Why?" When he spoke, his voice carried years of trying to forget. "Because the mathematics I used wasn't taught anywhere. It wasn't in textbooks. It was just something I could see. patterns in space-time that felt natural as breathing, but that I couldn't explain to anyone else. After the crisis, they tried to study me, but the more they tested, the more they realized my approach was fundamentally different from galactic standard. Not better or worse, just alien. That terrified them. Queen Celestara nodded, and that made them uncomfortable. Terrified, corrected Marcus. So they classified everything, gave credit to committees, and quietly arranged for me to disappear into obscurity. "Do you know why I really allowed you to work with my daughters?" asked Queen Celestara finally. "Because I recognized what I was seeing in them," she replied. "The same mathematical intuition you carry. Zephyrians evolved it, humans occasionally manifest it naturally, and probably dozens of other species have versions we've never bothered to recognize." Marcus felt understanding shift. "You knew from the beginning." "I suspected. Tonight confirmed it." She stood. "My daughters didn't just win a competition. They proved that galactic understanding of mathematical truth has been artificially limited for centuries, because a teacher helped them trust their own way of seeing the universe. And as they walked away, no one dared laugh again, for they finally understood what they had witnessed. 6 months later, the Imperial Academy bore little resemblance to the rigid institution Marcus had first encountered. Sterile corridors now hummed with excited conversations as students and faculty explored mathematical approaches, honoring diverse ways different species naturally understood reality. Marcus stood before his own classroom as Director of Alternative Mathematical Studies, watching Zephyrian students work alongside Andromedans, Rigelians, and humans to solve once impossible problems. Rigid desks had been replaced with flexible spaces accommodating different learning needs. "The key insight," he explained to his mixed species class, "is that mathematics isn't about finding the one correct answer. It's about understanding that reality is complex enough to support multiple valid approaches to truth." Princess Lyra, now a peer tutor, raised her hand. "But how do we know when an approach is valid versus just wrong?" "That's the beautiful part," replied Marcus, displaying the same equation solved through Andromedan logic, Zephyrian flow dynamics, and human intuitive leaps. Truth is truth, regardless of the path. Different approaches should arrive at compatible answers, even if methods look completely different. The changes extended beyond the academy. Queen Celestara's scholarship program had attracted students from across the galaxy, while research collaborations were yielding technological breakthroughs that honored diverse mathematical traditions. The rigid hierarchy that had dominated galactic civilization for millennia was giving way to something more complex and beautiful, a recognition that intelligence itself was far more varied than anyone had dared imagine. That evening, as Marcus walked home through the Academy's transformed halls, he passed a group of young students from 6 different species working together on a problem that bridged quantum mechanics and artistic expression. Their laughter echoed through corridors that had once known only the sound of competition and fear. In a universe built on arrogance, sometimes a single act of dignity is enough to shift the stars themselves.